And that, my eager little knowledge absorbers, is why you should never pet a Venusian acid slug. Unless, of course, you're particularly attached to having skin and would like to become even more attached to it. Literally. As in, stuck to your classroom desk for the rest of eternity. I paused, waiting for the customary titter of laughter from my students. Right on cue. Predictable as a quantum clock. My name is Professor Quill-Nackey. That's Professor Quill-Nack to you, thank you very much. I've been teaching comparative xenobiology at the Galactic University for longer than some species have been spacefaring. 43 stellar cycles, to be exact. Long enough to know that every classroom has its archetypes. Today's lecture theater was no exception. The usual assortment of galactic odds and ends sat before me. Front row, center, bleep blorp, not his real name. But I refused to master the 17 tonal shifts required to pronounce it correctly, furiously taking notes with all 4 appendages. A typical Jexarian overachiever. To his left, the Trilaxian twins who finish each other's sentences and, occasionally, each other's meals. Disgusting habit. That. Now then, today we begin our unit on Class 12 Death Worlds. These are planets so absurdly, so ridiculously hostile to life that the very fact anything evolved there at all is enough to make a statistician weep. I tapped my datapad, and a holographic image of a blue-green marble appeared above my desk. Exhibit A, Sol 3, known to its unfortunate inhabitants as Earth. The classroom erupted in whispers. Some students leaned forward in fascination. Others recoiled instinctively. One particularly sensitive Flotian student began emitting distress bubbles. Settle down, it's just a hologram. The gravity won't crush you. The bacteria won't dissolve you. The weather won't freeze and boil you, sometimes on the same day. I rolled all 3 of my eye stalks for dramatic effect. Though I must say, if you find a mere image distressing, perhaps interspecies relations isn't the career path for you. That's when I noticed her again, sitting in the back row as always. Maya Brooks. The only human in our entire university, possibly in this entire sector. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't reacting at all. Just sitting there, taking meticulous notes, face impassive. Ms. Brooks, since you hail from this charming death trap, perhaps you'd care to illuminate us with your first-hand experiences? What's it like to evolve on a planet that seems determined to murder you at every turn? I asked, more out of habit than expectation. She hadn't spoken once in the 8 weeks since my course began. Sure enough, Maya simply shook her head, her strange fur-covered cranium making that curious side-to-side motion humans used to indicate negation. Her eyes, just 2 of them, how do they manage? Remained fixed on her notes. I clicked my mandibles in mild annoyance. Very well. The silent treatment continues. As I turned back to my lecture, I caught the not-so-subtle gestures of Zark Finblast, our star athlete. He was pantomiming what I assumed was supposed to be a human walking through high gravity, his 6 limbs contorting ridiculously as his tablemate suppressed their laughter. Mr. Finblast. Since you appear to be conducting an interpretive dance about bipedal locomotion, perhaps you would like to explain the evolutionary advantages of having only 2 legs on a planet with Earth's gravity? The class erupted in laughter as Zark's exoskeleton flushed a mortified purple. Everyone except Maya, that is. She continued writing, seemingly oblivious to both the mockery and my intervention. What a strange species humans are. They come from a world where water falls from the sky regularly. A planet with gravity so crushing that most of you would collapse into quivering puddles. Temperature variations that would shatter the molecular bonds of half the students in this room. Atmospheric pressure that would make a Jovian gas dweller feel claustrophobic. Whoa! And yet, there she sits. So unremarkable, so quiet. When everything in her evolutionary history suggests she should be a roaring, rampaging monster. The cosmic joke of it all never fails to amuse me. If only my students knew what I knew about humans. If only they understood what that silent girl in the back row could do if provoked. But they'd learn soon enough. We all would. Now then, who can tell me why Earth's microbiome alone qualifies it as a Class 12 death world? Anyone? Anyone at all? As hands and tentacles and photosensitive patches rose around the room, I couldn't help but notice that Maya Brooks had, for the first time, looked up from her notes. And for just a fraction of a second, I could have sworn I saw her lips curl into what humans call a smile. A most unsettling expression, if you ask me. Attention, knowledge sponges. I have an announcement that will either thrill or terrify you, depending on how seriously you've been taking my lectures. I waved my tentacle dramatically at the class, pausing for effect. The university has somehow approved my request for a field trip to the Lunara observation base. Yes, that's right. Next week, instead of merely listening to me drone on about hostile environments, you'll get to experience one firsthand. Though admittedly, a significantly sanitized version. The classroom erupted in a cacophony of excited chirps, whistles, and the occasional gravitational disturbance from the more emotionally volatile species. I waited for the commotion to subside, idly sorting through student records on my datapad. Before you all vibrate yourselves into different dimensional planes with excitement, let me remind you that this trip is educational. The moon base houses our most advanced xenohazard containment facilities, where specimens from various death worlds are studied in controlled conditions. I flicked through a series of holographic projections. You'll observe. You'll take notes. You'll try very hard not to become someone's lunch. Basic field trip protocol. That's when I noticed something odd in my records. Maya Brooks, our silent human enigma, had the highest grades in the class. Perfect scores on every assignment and exam. How had I missed this? She'd never asked a question, never contributed to discussions, never so much as raised one of her peculiar 5-digited appendages. Ms. Brooks, I called out, causing several students to swivel their various sensory organs toward the back of the room. Your academic performance is unexpected. Here to share your secret with the rest of these underachievers? Again, that maddening head shake. No verbal response. Just those two eerily focused eyes staring back at me. I was about to press further when a pompous voice cut through the silence. Professor Quilnake, surely you don't expect us to visit specimens from Earth during this excursion? My father sits on the Galactic Safety Council, and he assures me that human biological samples are far too dangerous for educational settings. Ah, Zeplar Banjorax. Heir to the Banjorax mining fortune and, coincidentally, the most insufferable student I'd had the displeasure of teaching in at least 15 stellar cycles. His species, the Vaxori, were known for their natural armor and equally rigid thinking. Mr. Banjorax, while I'm endlessly fascinated by your father's opinions on educational policy, I clicked my mandibles sarcastically. I can assure you that all specimens are contained according to Galactic University safety standards, here including those from Earth. Zeplar's elaborately ridged forehead furrowed. But Professor, everyone knows that humans are walking biological weapons. Their oral cavities contain more bacteria than most planets. Their epidermal layers shed constantly, spreading contaminants everywhere. They're practically designed to infect and destroy. I noticed Maya's pencil snap in half, a sign of emotion I'd seen from her all semester. Interesting. Interesting. Mr. Banjorax, I said slowly, perhaps you should direct your concerns about human biology to the actual human sitting 3 rows behind you, rather than treating her as though she's not capable of understanding your heavily accented galactic standard. The classroom fell uncomfortably quiet. Zeplar's exoskeleton plates clicked nervously as he turned to look at Maya, who was now calmly retrieving a new writing implement from her bag, acting as if nothing had happened. I meant no offense, he stammered unconvincingly. I merely... The classroom lights suddenly flickered, interrupting what would have surely been a masterpiece of backpedaling. Our building's ancient security system pinged through the classroom speakers. Atmospheric pressure anomaly detected. Please secure all pressure-sensitive materials and organisms. Several of my more gaseous students immediately began to panic, their translucent membranes pulsating with distress. Remain calm, I shouted over the commotion. It's just the maintenance drones adjusting the environmental controls again. Happens every. My reassurance was cut short by a loud crash from the hallway, followed by several alarmed shouts. Before I could even move toward the door, it burst open, revealing a panicked maintenance worker, one of those 4 armed Proxians. Professor, there's been an accident in Lab 7, gravitational stabilizer malfunction. Without warning, the entire building lurched sideways. Desks slid. Students screamed or emitted whatever passed for screams in their respective biological configurations. A large storage cabinet broke free from its moorings and began to topple directly toward the Trilaxian twins, who sat frozen in identical poses of terror. What happened next occurred so quickly that my 3 eyes could barely process it. One moment, Maya Brooks was in her seat at the back of the room. The next, she had somehow crossed the classroom, shoved the twins aside with shocking strength, and braced herself against the falling cabinet. Her strange, muscle-bound limbs strained under the weight of the massive metal structure that should have crushed her flat. "Anyone going to help me with this thing?" she asked casually. Her voice, the first time any of us had heard it, was surprisingly melodic for a creature from a high-gravity death pit. The class stared in collective shock. Not just at her incredible feat of strength and speed, but at the simple fact that she had finally spoken. After a moment of stunned silence, several students rushed to help, including a thoroughly humbled-looking Zeplar. As the emergency systems kicked in and the artificial gravity stabilized, I couldn't help but notice the strange glances my students were now giving Maya. It was no longer mockery or dismissal. Now it was something closer to fear? Respect? Curiosity? Perhaps all 3. Later that day, as I was reviewing the field trip manifests in my office, Lieutenant Nev Parkeen from University Security interrupted me with a most concerning report. "Professor, we've intercepted some troubling communications from the Vargic sector," the lieutenant said, his ceremonial head spines twitching with agitation. Encrypted transmissions suggesting unusual movement near the Lunara observation base. "The Vargics? Those trigger-happy militarists." I scoffed. "What business would they have with a research facility?" "Unknown, sir. But given the, sensitive nature of some of the specimens housed there." I frowned, my eye stalks contracting with worry. Should we postpone the field trip? "The university chancellor insists all academic activities proceed as scheduled," Parkeen replied stiffly. "We're increasing security protocols, but the military liaison is concerned about appearing provocative." "Ah, yes. The eternal tension between our academic administration and the Galactic Defense Forces. One wanted to study dangerous things, the other wanted to weaponize them. An old dance with predictable steps." "Very well, Lieutenant. We'll proceed as planned." But perhaps I glanced down at my student roster, my gaze lingering on one particular name. Perhaps this unexpected development might work in our favor. "Sir?" "Nothing, Lieutenant. Just a professor's idle speculation. Thank you for the warning." As Parkeen left, I found myself thinking about Maya Brooks and her perfect test scores, about the incredible speed and strength she'd displayed today, about everything I knew regarding humans and their Deathworld adaptations. Perhaps having a human along on this field trip wouldn't be so bad after all. Welcome to Lunara Observation Base, the Galactic University's premier research facility for studying biological specimens from extreme environments. Please keep all appendages, sensory organs, and phase-shifting membranes inside the designated safety areas at all times. The tour guide, a particularly enthusiastic Prixian with too many teeth and not enough understanding of personal space, continued rattling off safety protocols as we glided through the base's pristine corridors. My students huddled together in intimidated clumps, eyes and various sensory appendages darting nervously at the reinforced containment units lining the walls. All except Maya Brooks, naturally. Our resident Deathworlder strolled casually alongside the group, examining the specimens with what appeared to be mild professional interest. Like someone browsing sale items at a market stall rather than facing potentially lethal organisms from across the galaxy. And here we have our pride and joy, the observation dome. Our guide gestured with 3 of her 6 limbs toward a massive hemispherical structure ahead, equipped with quantum-reinforced transparent alloy for unobstructed viewing of lunar surface conditions while maintaining perfect environmental stability inside. As we entered the dome, even I had to admit the view was spectacular. The cratered lunar landscape stretched out below us, the distant blue marble of Earth hanging above the horizon. My students dispersed throughout the room, pressing their various anatomical features against the transparent walls. Professor Quilnock, a smooth voice purred beside me. Zep-Lar Ban-Jorax had sidled up, his exoskeleton polished to an offensive shine. I've been meaning to discuss my concerns about having certain biological hazards on this educational trip. His eyes flickered meaningfully toward Maya, who stood alone at the far side of the dome. Mr. Ban-Jorax. I clicked in annoyance. If you're so concerned about biological hazards, perhaps you should worry more about the 17 different types of spores currently inhabiting your respiratory tract. Vaxori hygiene habits are, shall we say, a fascinating study in evolutionary oversights. His faceplates shifted in obvious offense. My father. Yes, your father sits on the Galactic Safety Council. A fact you've mentioned approximately 9 times per lecture. It's fascinating how genetic inheritance works on your world. Tell me, did you also inherit his capacity for original thought, or was that considered an unnecessary trait? Before Zep-Lar could sputter out a response, a shrill alarm cut through the dome. Red emergency lights began pulsing overhead. Attention. Unidentified vessels approaching. Defense protocols initiating. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. Our tour guide's professional demeanor evaporated instantly. That can't be right. We're not scheduled for any arrivals today. The observation dome's screens flickered to life, showing multiple sleek, predatory-looking ships descending toward the base. Even from a distance, I recognized their distinctive silhouettes. Urgix raiders, militant separatists, known for their ruthlessness and highly developed weapons technology. Everyone remained calm. I shouted over the growing panic. Easy for me to say, of course I wasn't the one emitting fear pheromones or involuntarily phase-shifting into defensive postures. The base defenses will handle this, the tour guide insisted, though her quivering head frills betrayed her uncertainty. We have state-of-the-art. A thunderous explosion rocked the entire structure. The lights flickered, then died, leaving us in emergency-only illumination. The defenses, she finished weakly. They've taken out the main generator, someone shouted from across the dome. A chaos erupted. My students scattered in panic, hiding under furniture, pressing themselves against walls, some even attempting to squeeze themselves into ventilation ducts. Bleep Blorp was spinning in distressed circles, all 4 appendages flailing wildly. The Trilaxian twins had merged into their defensive configuration, becoming an undulating ball of spines. And Zep-Lar? The self-important Vaxori who constantly boasted about his species' natural armor and fighting prowess? He had crawled under a desk, curled into a protective ball, and appeared to be leaking some sort of viscous fluid from his fear glands. We're going to die, he wailed. They'll breach the dome and we'll all be exposed to vacuum. Or worse, they'll take us as slaves for their breeding programs. Another explosion, closer this time. The entire dome shuddered ominously. The emergency lockdown has sealed us in, the tour guide whimpered. Standard protocol during attacks. We're trapped until help arrives. And when exactly will that be? I demanded. Galactic response forces are stationed 6 hours away at minimum, she admitted. 6 hours. I surveyed my panicking students. Most of them wouldn't last 6 minutes in this state. That's when I noticed Maya. While everyone else was in various states of breakdown, the human stood calmly by the observation window, studying the approaching ships with unsettling intensity. Her posture had changed, subtly back straight, feet slightly apart, hands clasped behind her. It reminded me of something I couldn't quite place. Ms. Brooks? I approached cautiously. You seem unusually composed for someone facing imminent death or captivity. Maya turned to me, and I was struck by the transformation in her eyes. No longer the quiet, observant student. Now they held something cold, calculating, almost predatory. Professor, she said quietly, how many security personnel are stationed on this base? 4? Maybe 5? This is a research facility, not a military outpost. Maya nodded, as if confirming something she'd already suspected. And the emergency protocols? What exactly happens during lockdown? All non-essential systems shut down to preserve life support. Communications are restricted to emergency channels only. The containment areas are sealed to prevent specimen escape during structural damage. Structural integrity fields? Limited to critical areas only, primarily the outer shell and specimen containment. She nodded again, turning back to the window. Those are Vargic's T-6 assault cruisers, latest model. Crew of 12 each. 3 ships means approximately 36 combatants, plus whatever they're keeping in reserve on their command vessel. She pointed to a larger ship hanging back from the attack group. They've disabled the main generator but left the auxiliary systems intact, which means they want something inside the base. Something that requires power to maintain. I stared at her, mandibles slack with shock. How could you possibly know all that? For the first time since I'd known her, Maya Brooks smiled fully. Not a pleasant expression on a human face. Too many teeth. Too little warmth. Captain Maya Brooks, Earth Defense Force, Special Containment Division. I was wondering when they'd make their move. Another explosion rocked the base. Even closer now. When who would make their move? What are you talking about? The Vargics have been tracking me for weeks, she said matter-of-factly. I'm not just a student, Professor. I'm on assignment. Intelligence suggested they were planning something at this facility, but we didn't know when. You're a spy? I hissed, my voice dropping to a whisper despite the chaos around us. Not exactly. More like insurance. She glanced at our terrified classmates. Your students are about to get a practical demonstration in Death World adaptations that wasn't on the syllabus. The dome's main doors buckled inward with a screech of protesting metal. The Vargics were breaking through. What can you possibly do against armed raiders? I demanded. Maya reached into her seemingly ordinary student bag and removed what looked like a simple writing stylus. With a flick of her wrist, it extended into something much more ominous. Professor, she said calmly, perhaps you should get everyone away from the door. Things are about to get educational. Across the room, Zeplar's panicked sobbing provided a stark counterpoint to Maya's composed deadliness. The student who had endlessly pontificated about human weakness was falling apart, while the silent human girl was preparing for battle. The irony was not lost on me. The observation dome's doors finally gave way with a shriek of tortured metal. 6 Vargics raiders poured through the opening, their sleek combat exoskeletons gleaming under the emergency lights. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall, with 4 upper limbs ending in either weapons or manipulator appendages. Their breathing apparatuses gave their scaled faces a menacing, insectoid appearance. Nobody move, the lead raider bellowed, his translator making his galactic standard sound artificially deep. This facility is now under Vargic's control. Cooperate, and you might survive to see your next molt. My students froze in various states of terror. The Trilaxian twins had melded into a protective ball. Bleep Blorp was making a high-pitched keening sound that threatened to shatter my auditory membranes. And Zeplar, our self-proclaimed warrior-class student, had actually passed out, his exoskeleton plates clicking softly as his unconscious body twitched. The raid leader surveyed the room, his compound eyes sweeping across the cowering students. "Where is the human specimen?" he demanded. "Our intelligence confirms a Sol 3 native is among you." I felt my primary heart stutter. They were here for Maya? But why would elite Vargix raiders? "I'm here," Maya called out calmly, stepping forward from behind a display console. She had somehow managed to stow away whatever weapon she'd produced earlier and now appeared as unthreatening as ever in her standard university jumpsuit. The raiders collectively swiveled toward her, weapons trained on her small frame. Their leader chittered something that sounded like laughter. "This is what we came for? This fragile thing?" He gestured dismissively with one of his secondary limbs. "Secure the human. Kill anyone who interferes." Two raiders approached Maya, seeming almost casual in their movements. They clearly saw no threat in the unarmed human female standing quietly before them. "Interesting tactical choice," Maya commented, her voice carrying easily across the suddenly silent dome. "You've positioned your squad with standard Vargix offensive formation, but you've left your left flank exposed to the maintenance access corridor. Your rear guard is standing directly beneath a structural weak point in the ceiling. And you're all still wearing atmospheric filtration systems calibrated for vacuum exposure. Which means your auditory reception is delayed by approximately 0.3 seconds. The raiders hesitated, clearly thrown by this unexpected tactical assessment. "Silence, human," the leader snarled. "Your species' tendency toward meaningless vocalization is well documented. It will not save you." Maya smiled that unsettling, teeth-baring human smile again. "I'm not trying to save myself, I'm giving a lecture." She glanced toward me. "That's what we're here for, right, Professor? Educational purposes?" Before I could respond, Maya moved. And when I say moved, I mean she practically blurred across the space between her and the nearest raider. One moment she was standing still, the next she had somehow disassembled the raider's primary weapon using nothing but her bare hands and what appeared to be knowledge of exactly how Vargix technology functioned. "Lesson 1, she announced to my stunned class as she ducked under a wild swing from another raider. Earthworld adaptations include significantly enhanced reaction times. Humans evolved to track and anticipate the movements of both predators and prey across multiple terrains. The raiders recovered from their shock and began firing their secondary weapons. Energy pulses scorched the walls where Maya had been standing a split second earlier. Lesson 2, she continued, somehow now across the room and dismantling an environmental control panel. Problem solving under pressure. When a human's flight or fight response activates. She jammed something into the panel, causing the lights to flicker wildly. Half the raiders' exoskeleton systems suddenly powered down, freezing them in place. Our brains actually process information more efficiently, not less. The lead raider bellowed in rage. "Kill the human now." Lesson 3, Maya called out, now somehow holding what appeared to be a makeshift weapon constructed from parts of the environmental panel. Tool use is fundamental to human survival strategies. She fired the improvised device, sending a pulse of energy that overloaded the remaining raiders' exoskeleton systems. They collapsed like puppets with cut strings. I stared in astonishment. In the span of perhaps 30 seconds, one unarmed human female had neutralized 6 elite Vargix raiders. And she was narrating the experience as a lecture? "Ms. Brooks, I mean, Captain, what exactly is happening here?" I managed to stammer. Maya was already moving toward the fallen raiders, efficiently securing them with their own restraint devices. As I said, Professor, a practical demonstration. The Vargix have been trying to acquire human specimens for their bioweapons division for years. They believe our adaptability and immune systems could be weaponized. So you used yourself as bait? More like an opportunity for mutual education. She glanced up at my still cowering students. Your class gets to see Deathworld adaptations in action. The Vargics learn why attempting to capture humans is a tactically unsound decision, and I complete my assignment without causing an interspecies diplomatic incident. Everyone wins. From across the room, a groggy Zep-Lar was regaining consciousness. He stared at the scene before him, 6 elite Vargics warriors incapacitated, and Maya Brooks calmly checking their restraints. What happened? He slurred. Your human classmate just saved all our lives, I informed him dryly. But that's impossible. Humans are weak. They're apparently not as weak as your understanding of xenobiology, Mr. Banjorax, I replied. Maya approached one of the display consoles and began typing rapidly. The Vargics command ship is still in orbit. They'll be expecting a confirmation signal soon. Can't you just, I don't know, do whatever you just did, but to their ship? I asked, gesturing vaguely at the incapacitated raiders. Maya gave me a look that made me feel like the most ignorant professor in the galaxy. That would be an act of war, Professor. We're trying to avoid interspecies conflict, not escalate it. So what exactly is your plan? She finished typing and turned to face the class. I need volunteers, preferably someone who can mimic Vargic's vocal patterns. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Bleep Blorp raised a tentative appendage. I can do that. My species has adaptive vocal structures. Maya nodded approvingly. Perfect. And I need someone who understands orbital mechanics and Vargic's navigation protocols. More silence. Then, to my utter shock, Zep-Lar slowly raised his hand. My father's mining operations use modified Vargic's guidance systems, he admitted reluctantly. I'm familiar with their basics. Excellent, Maya said, suddenly sounding very much like an instructor herself. The rest of you, I need you to help secure these raiders while we send a false all-clear signal and arrange a very special welcome for their reinforcements. As my students cautiously emerged from their hiding places and began following Maya's instructions, I found myself experiencing a profound shift in perspective. This human, this silent observer whom we had all underestimated, mocked even, was not just surviving among us. She was thriving, adapting, turning our very assumptions about her into tactical advantages. You know, I said quietly to Maya as she calibrated some device she'd pulled from a hidden pocket, I believe I need to significantly revise my lecture notes on human adaptability. Might want to add a section on improvisational humor while you're at it, she replied, not looking up from her work. It's statistically our third most effective survival strategy. After what exactly? She glanced up, that disconcerting human smile playing at her lips, excessive curiosity, and a surprisingly robust digestive system. Despite the mortal danger we were still facing, I found myself clicking my mandibles in what my species recognized as laughter. Perhaps humans weren't so incomprehensible after all. The false all-clear signal worked. Within 20 minutes, the Vargic's command ship had docked with the moon base, exactly as Maya had predicted. Bleep Blorp's vocal mimicry was flawless. Zep-Lar's knowledge of Vargic's navigation protocols proved surprisingly comprehensive. And Maya? She orchestrated everything with the calm precision of someone arranging furniture, rather than outmaneuvering a hostile military force. They're coming through the main airlock now, she announced, monitoring a security feed she'd somehow managed to hack into. 12 more raiders plus their commander. And what exactly is your plan for dealing with 13 more heavily armed Vargics? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. More improvised weaponry? More Deathworld acrobatics? Maya shook her head. No need. We're going to talk to them. Talk? Talk. To the murderous raiders who just tried to kidnap you and kill the rest of us. She looked at me with those unnervingly direct human eyes. Professor, What's the first rule of xenobiology? The question caught me off guard. Know your specimen, I replied automatically. Exactly. She gestured for our small group to follow her. And I know the Vargiks better than they know themselves. We moved through the corridors silently, Maya leading the way with absolute confidence despite never having visited the base before. She positioned us in what appeared to be some sort of control nexus with multiple access points to different sections of the base. Through one of the viewports, I could see the Vargiks command team moving cautiously down the main corridor. Their leader was unmistakable, nearly 8 feet tall, with elaborate rank markings etched into his exoskeleton. His primary weapons were holstered, suggesting confidence or perhaps arrogance. Maya pressed a series of controls, and suddenly her face appeared on every screen throughout the base. Her voice echoed through the communication systems. Commander Draz Kar of the Vargiks Liberation Fleet, she said calmly. Welcome to Lunara Observation Base. The Vargiks commander froze, his head snapping up to the nearest screen. Human. How do you know my name? Where are my advance team? Your advance team is secure. Unconscious but unharmed. As for how I know your name, Maya's voice remained conversational, almost friendly. I've been studying your species for quite some time now. Did you know that Vargiks military records are surprisingly easy to access if you understand the psychological patterns in your encryption protocols? You're all so predictable. The commander's neck frills extended in what I recognized as a threat display. You understand nothing about us, human. Release my warriors immediately, or we will execute every life form on this base. Commander, I'll make this simple, Maya continued, ignoring his threats. I know why you're here. You believe human biology holds the key to your bioweapons program. You think our immune systems and adaptability can be weaponized against your enemies. You're right, of course. I stared at her in shock. Was she agreeing with them? But what you fail to understand, she continued, is that we've already considered this possibility. Why do you think I've been silent all this time in class? I wasn't shy. I was listening, learning, cataloging weaknesses and psychological patterns across 17 different species. The commander seemed taken aback. What are you saying, human? I'm saying that while you were planning to capture one human, I was determining the most efficient way to neutralize your entire operation without causing permanent harm to anyone involved. For instance, did you know that your exoskeleton technology has a critical vulnerability when exposed to specific resonance frequencies? Or that your ship's security protocols automatically defer to highest-ranking officer authorization, which I already extracted from your advanced team's equipment? Maya tapped a few more controls, and every light in the base flickered once. I've just transmitted a signal to your ship. Your weapons systems are now offline. Your engines are locked down. And I've sent your current coordinates to the Galactic University Security Forces. They'll be arriving in, about 20 minutes. The commander's compound eyes widened in what could only be disbelief. Impossible. No single being could. Commander, Maya interrupted gently, have you ever wondered why humans are classified as coming from a death world? It's not just our physical adaptations. It's how we think. She leaned closer to the camera, her expression suddenly intense. Humans evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill us. Microbes, animals, weather, the very environment itself. We didn't just develop strong bodies, we developed minds that can turn any situation to our advantage. We see patterns where others see chaos. We create solutions from whatever materials are available. And most importantly, we learn, constantly, obsessively. The commander's posture had changed subtly. His threat display was retracting. Was that fear I was seeing? Your 6 warriors were defeated by one unarmed human female, Maya continued. Not because I'm physically stronger, but because while you were seeing a weak specimen to be captured, I was already 10 steps ahead, planning your defeat, using your own technology against you. The commander's voice came through the speakers, now noticeably less confident. What do you want? I want you to order your warriors to lay down their weapons and surrender peacefully. No one needs to be harmed today. This can end as nothing more than a cultural misunderstanding. After a moment of tense silence, the commander slowly reached for his communication device. Stand down, he ordered his team. Surrender your weapons. As the Varjik's warriors complied, I found myself staring at Maya Brooks with new understanding. Throughout the semester, we had all underestimated her, assumed her silence meant weakness or fear. We'd mocked her species for evolving on a hostile planet. We'd seen only the physical adaptations, the resilience to gravity, the resistance to temperature extremes, the robust immune system. But now I understood the truth. The real reason humans were classified as Deathworlders wasn't their bodies at all. It was their minds. Their relentless pattern recognition. Their ability to turn anything into a tool or a weapon. Their capacity to observe, learn, and exploit weaknesses that other species didn't even realize they had. For the first time in my 43 stellar cycles of teaching, I felt a chill run down my central nerve column. If this was what one quiet human student could do when provoked, what could an entire planet of them accomplish if they ever decided to turn their collective problem-solving abilities toward galactic conquest? Perhaps classifying Earth as merely a Class 12 death world was a dangerous underestimation. As university security finally arrived to take the Varjiks into custody, Maya turned to me with that unsettling human smile. So, Professor, she asked casually, do I get extra credit for the practical demonstration? And that, my traumatized little knowledge sponge, is what we call a practical field experience, I announced to my shell-shocked class as our transport pod returned to Galactic University's main campus. I trust you've all taken detailed notes? There will be an exam on this material. 2 full-cycle units had passed since the Lunara incident, as university administrators were now calling it. The Varjik's raiding party had been transferred to Galactic Peacekeeping Forces. The moon base was undergoing extensive security upgrades. And my xenobiology class? Well, let's just say the dynamic had changed somewhat. Maya Brooks no longer sat alone at the back of the classroom. Students who had once mocked her behind her back now competed for seats nearby, peppering her with questions that she answered with surprising patience. Even more shocking was the complete transformation of Zeplar Banjorax, who had abandoned his usual pompous demeanor in favor of something approaching humility. I still don't understand how you knew the commander's ship would respond to that specific frequency pattern, Zeplar was saying as I entered the classroom for today's lecture. Maya smiled that still somewhat unnerving human smile. Varjik's military technology is based on their evolutionary biology. Their exoskeletons resonate at predictable frequencies related to their home world's gravitational patterns. Once you understand the connection between their biology and their engineering approach, the vulnerabilities become obvious. Obvious to you, perhaps, I interjected, setting my teaching materials on the podium. Some of us didn't have the advantage of evolving on a planet determined to murder us at every opportunity. Speaking of which, Maya said, turning to address me directly, I've been meaning to correct some inaccuracies in your Earth lectures, Professor. Inaccuracies? In my curriculum? Impossible. I've been teaching this material since before your species achieved faster-than-light travel. With respect, Professor, you've been teaching that humans evolved exceptional physical adaptations to survive Earth's harsh conditions. That's only partially true. Our greatest adaptation isn't physical at all, it's psychological and social. The class had gone silent, all sensory organs trained on Maya. Even I found myself genuinely curious. Earth isn't just hostile because of its gravity or weather patterns or microorganisms, she continued. It's hostile because it's unpredictable. Humans evolved intelligence that thrives on chaos. We don't just survive change, we seek it out. We get bored without it. That's why the Earth Defense Force recruited me. Not for combat skills, but for my background in xenopsychology. So your entire silent student act was what? A psychological experiment? I asked, feeling mildly indignant. More like field research. I was under orders to observe and document behavioral patterns across multiple species without influencing those patterns through direct interaction. Being quiet was the simplest approach. She shrugged those oddly constructed human shoulders. Plus, it was fascinating to see how quickly everyone filled in the blanks with their own assumptions. Zeplar's exoskeleton flushed a deep purple, the Vaxori equivalent of embarrassment. Some of us made rather unfortunate assumptions. Don't beat yourself up, Maya replied kindly. Confirmation bias is a cross-species cognitive tendency. You believed humans were weak because that's what your culture taught you, so you interpreted my silence as evidence of that weakness. Instead of recognizing it as the tactical advantage it actually was, I mused. Most fascinating. As class began and I launched into my lecture on adaptive camouflage techniques among gas giant native species, I couldn't help but glance occasionally at Maya Brooks. The unassuming human who had single-handedly neutralized an elite military strike force while simultaneously delivering an impromptu lecture on her species' evolutionary advantages. Humans. What a thoroughly unsettling species. Their bodies, while durable, weren't particularly impressive by galactic standards. No natural armor, no redundant organs, no specialized appendages. Just soft, vulnerable flesh wrapped around a comically rigid internal support structure. But their minds, their capacity to observe, analyze, and exploit, their ability to treat literally anything as a potential tool or weapon. Their strange tendency to form emotional bonds with potential predators, prey, or even inanimate objects. Their baffling talent for finding humor in situations of extreme danger. Perhaps it was time to significantly revise our classification system. A species shouldn't be categorized merely by the hostility of their native environment, but by the adaptations they developed in response to that hostility. By that metric, humans weren't just deathworlders, they were something far more interesting and far more dangerous. I made a mental note to update my curriculum before next semester. Perhaps a new unit, psychological adaptations of deathworld species, why you should never make assumptions about a human's capabilities based on their outward appearance or behavior. Or maybe something catchier. I'd work on the title. Professor? Maya's voice interrupted my thoughts. You've been staring at the wall for 3 minutes without speaking. Are you all right? Perfectly fine, Ms. Brooks. Just mentally revising my lesson plans to include a certain practical demonstration we all recently experienced. Will that be on the exam? Bleep Lorp asked anxiously. Oh yes, I replied, clicking my mandibles in what the students had come to recognize as my version of a grin. In fact, I'm thinking of bringing in a guest lecturer for that particular session. All eyes turned to Maya, who raised her hands in mock surrender. Don't worry, she said with that disconcerting human smile. I promise to give you all fair warning before the next time I silence an army. Somehow I didn't find that particularly reassuring. But I had to admit xenobiology had never been quite this educational.